Welcome back. Well, in the first half, we heard from a former Israeli ambassador to the United States. Now we can go to Los Angeles to talk to world-famous journalist and director Abby Martin, whose debut feature, Gaza Fights for Freedom, is out now. A warning, though, that during this interview, some viewers may find the images disturbing. Abby, thanks so much for finally coming on Going Underground, even if it's at a very grim moment, arguably, in history. First, your reaction to Netanyahu facing trial for bribery and fraud.
Look, I think this indictment will have absolutely no impact whatsoever on Israeli society. We have to remember that Netanyahu can still win the election with an indictment looming. And of course, we can't forget that he's not getting indicted for war crimes, right? I mean, every time the indictment was looming, he just kind of carpet bombs Gaza and hopes that that will garner him more support. But that's what he really should be indicted for. And again, I think the most important thing to remember is this will have absolutely no impact on Palestinians. Benny Gantz, his counterpart, what we're told is the centrist left candidate, is a former IDF commander who also cheered on the declaration to annex the West Bank that Netanyahu agreed upon, and also the U.S.'s recent decision to codify illegal settlements.
Well, you mentioned Gaza there. There's been continuing violence. Of all the injustices, you and your co-director on the film, the world-famous anti-war army veteran Mike Preisner, have covered. Why choose Gaza for your first debut feature-length documentary?
Well, Afshin, of course, this is one of the largest humanitarian crises in the world. 2.2 million people living in an open-air prison, half are children. So this is a relentless siege against kids. And of course, my government is providing economic, political cover for this ongoing crisis, where in 2020, even the UN says there will be no water. So it really is a dire situation. And of course, the Great March of Return, which started March 30th, 2018, was unlike anything that we've ever seen before in Gaza.
6 weeks later, on May 14th, in one of the most egregious massacres of unarmed peoples in modern history, Israeli snipers killed 60 people on this day alone, including 7 children.
But can that be taken seriously? 2 million people live there, the UN saying uninhabitable by next year, in part by UK-backed Israeli warplanes. So there couldn't have even been a film next year.
Right. I mean, it's absolutely horrifying, Afshin. We are running out of time. The nutrition value is blocked. The fact that they're denied basic mobility, and of course, electricity. I mean, 2 to 3 hours of electricity a day, and that really provided severe limitations for even transferring this footage. It really gave us a really stark insight on what life is really like, how, you can't freeze food, you can't pump water to the roofs.
I know you outlined the Israeli position. We just spoke, though, to former Israeli Foreign Minister Danny Ayalon. He told me Israeli forces act in self-defense against civilians forced to march by Hamas on their Great Return March, which you cover in the film, the Great Return March. And indeed, there are embedded sharpshooters amidst the protesters. Your reaction?
I mean, I have to laugh at that, Afshin. I looked at about 12 hours of protest footage. There wasn't one militant. There wasn't one weapon. And you can just look at the UN report, which is incontrovertibly proves extensive documentation of Israeli war crimes. We're talking about over 200 people that were gunned down with Israeli snipers. These snipers are perched up on a hilltop with a wide view of the demonstrations, and they literally just pick people off like it's target practice. Scores of civilians, but not only that, actual protected categories in the Geneva Convention's children, disabled people, medics. The vast majority of the people who were shot and gunned down, standing there wrapped in a Palestinian flag, standing there chanting national slogans, standing there filming the protest, or simply standing there doing nothing at all. This is all documented in the UN report, again, completely incontrovertible. But of course, they will always use this morally bankrupt argument that they're all human shields and all willing agents for Hamas. It is absolutely disgusting to take away these people's agency. You can just look at the Great March organizers themselves. I mean, these are unaffiliated with any political party. They're activists, they're artists, they're journalists, and they clearly stated that their goal was nonviolent civil disobedience akin to Occupy Wall Street to garner attention from the international community and mount pressure to draw attention to the fact that they're still refugees 70 years later, Afshin. But of course, they will always say they're all human shields, right? Well, the military definition of a human shield is literally a military person standing using a civilian as cover. That is not happening at the Great March, and that has never happened at the Great March. But it doesn't matter. They will always use this talking point.
But as you say in the film, in media in NATO nations, there are critics on both sides, and as Israelis present itself, there is a case of self-genocide here. And in the film, you show an Israeli apologist, some might say, saying the telegenically dead are being used by the Palestinians.
The rhetoric is incomprehensible, Afshin. It really is. Can you imagine calling a civilian population that is just relentlessly bombed under a medieval siege controlled by the land, air, by the Israeli military?
He was shot in the leg at the Great March of Return protests. Now unemployed, he resorts to one of the only sources of income: scavenging the destruction from Israeli bombing.
Imagine calling them they're committing a self-genocide. It is beyond comprehension how these talking points even stick without people laughing in their faces. And of course, Netanyahu saying that they're telegenically dead. They use telegenically dead Palestinians. The more dead, the better. Actually, having the audacity to claim that they like to pile up dead bodies to look good on television. I mean, it's absolutely sick.
And if anyone thinks they know about Gaza over the years of siege, tell me about how in this film you talk about Israeli permits for leaving Gaza. You say the survival rates for breast cancer have fallen from 86% to 30% in Gaza. And this is just in the past few years. It's very recent, these figures.
Exactly. If you look at the World Health Organization and the UN documentation, you can see that Israeli permits for medical travel have actually dropped dramatically over the last couple of years, reaching the lowest point ever recorded in 2017. Now, this was before the Great March started. It was already at 50%. So it was really, you have a 50% chance of life and death. Of course, we know that Israeli snipers target the limbs, a lot of times the kneecaps, and blow them out with exploding bullets that are internationally banned, by the way.
As material fills the hollow center, the trocar points joined at the rim begin to function much like a hole saw, effectively ripping through obstacles. Like plywood, autoglass, sheetrock, cinder block, sheet metal, and multiple layers of denim.
The interviewees in the film allege the use of exploding bullets, as you say. What evidence did you see of the use of Israeli poison gas?
Sure. So this has been extensively documented elsewhere as well. We actually weren't able to attain the craziest footage that I've seen of the gas. It is an unidentified toxic gas. As we know, Afshin, Israel is one of the largest arms dealers in the world. They use, they continue to use different armaments that they test out on Gaza. Then they go to these arms expos and basically say, battle tested. But the unidentified toxic gas, I mean, tear gas, I've been tear gassed several times. It does not cause severe hallucinations, suffocations, and seizures. Already someone has died suffocating from the toxic gas.
Well, Israel categorically denies the use of chemical weapons, but certainly on the British state-mandated BBC, on CNN, on mainstream media channels, they will be claiming that rockets are being fired at Sderot in the recent violence from Gaza, as it's covered. Tell me about Sderot in your film and the history of that town.
Sure. Sderot used to be a town that was 100% Palestinian and Muslim called Hajj. Before the Nakba, Palestinians that lived there actually helped hide Jewish settlers from British occupation forces. And so they were surprised to learn that, 6 months to a year later, a Jewish paramilitary actually expelled them violently from their village. This was one of 500 villages that was ethnically cleansed in what is now called the Nakba. The vast majority of those residents fled to Gaza. As we know, that was what the plan was in declassified Israeli military documents that we obtained from Ilan Pappé.
Just 6 months after Israel's creation, top secret military orders revealed their policy targeting the movement of civilian Arabs from Gaza. Their mission, put plainly, expulsion of the Arab villagers and denial of their return by demolishing their houses, to gather all the residents and deport them to Gaza, to burn down the villages, and most shockingly, surveying the refugees' way of movement and laying mines in the routes.
Fast forward to today, and now they kind of use the pretense of terrorism, but really they always used the pretense of just being an infiltrator, paint everyone in Gaza as a Hamas militant and just justify killing them.
And to be clear, and you show an IDF tweet in the film, you show that the present killing of civilians, men, women, and children, is purposeful. Everything was accurate and measured. They know where every bullet landed.
Right, and you see these Israeli officials that sound like me and you, right? I mean, this is for an American Western audience to try to condition and brainwash us that everything they're doing is justified and everyone in Palestinian, is an animal, pretty much. Israeli officials admitted themselves on record in a tweet that everything was accurate and measured. They know where every bullet landed. So the rhetoric that you hear about, oh, we don't mean to kill civilians, we only target people who are engaged in violence, it is a complete farce. We saw a leaked, basically, a sniper video from one of these snipers' nests that they shared themselves on either WhatsApp or Facebook that got leaked to the world. God knows how many other videos like this exist of them gleefully celebrating essentially a targeted assassination of a child. Every single shot is authorized by actually a higher up. So these go through multiple authorization levels before they're able to shoot.
Well, the film, towards the end, chronicles the story of paramedic Razan al-Najjar. Our ambassador, Danny Ayalon, in part one, he's previously said that she actually had explosives on her. Tell me about why you told the story of Razan al-Najjar at the end of this feature debut.
I'm shocked that option. That's certainly a new one to me. She was a true humanitarian. She was the first female medic out at the Great March of Return. She was interviewed by the New York Times a couple weeks before she was gunned down by Israeli snipers. They knew who she was. They taunted her frequently, shot warning shots at her feet. So the stories changed a couple times on why she died, right? At first they said she died by accident. And then, of course, the IDF official propaganda account released a video maliciously doctoring her, giving an interview to Turkish media where she says, "I'm a human shield, meaning I saved the injured and dying on the front lines." And they cut her maliciously and doctored it to just say, "I'm Razan al-Najjar, I'm a human shield." So it's absolutely beyond the pale to smear her when she was a hero, she was peaceful, and she was a humanitarian that the entire world should look up to as an example of what a medic should be. There was no accountability. There was no atonement for her death, just smears again. What they did to Razan during the last moments of her life and after she died is pretty shocking. And we wanted to properly tell her story. We wanted to give homage to her life, and we wanted to bring viewers with her on those last moments to really explain what it was she was doing when she was killed and how powerful her life really was.
The film's out now. Abby Martin, thank you.
Thank you.